The baby's cry cut through the pre-dawn darkness like a knife through my chest. I walked the length of the cabin again, bouncing Emma in my arms, whispering anything I could think of. But nothing worked anymore. Her tiny voice had grown weaker each day since Sarah died, and now it was barely more than a whisper, like the wind slipping through a crack in the wall. "Come on, sweetheart," I begged, trying to bring the spoonful of sugar water to her lips again. Just a little sip. She turned her head away, her skin pale and hot, her lips dry and cracked. Her eyes, they should have been bright blue like her mama's, were sunken and dull, and I felt the ice-cold grip of panic close around my ribs. It had been 4 days since Sarah took her last breath. I hadn't buried her yet. She still lay in our bed, wrapped in her favorite quilt, the one with the yellow stitching she'd been proud of. I couldn't bring myself to do it, not while our daughter was still fighting to live. As long as Sarah was here, I felt like maybe, just maybe, she was still holding on with me. Outside, the wind howled. Snow flurries drifted sideways past the window, thickening fast. The last trip into town had been nearly a week ago, and the pass was already icing over. Doc Miller had warned me, if anything goes wrong with the birth, you won't be able to get help. And now here I was, alone, no milk, no wet nurse, just a baby girl fading in my arms. I'd never felt so helpless. I'd fought through prairie fires and winter storms, pulled calves out of breech berths with one hand and shot coyotes with the other. But this was death by degrees. Silent, slow, and cruel. I tried the sugar water again. Emma wouldn't swallow. Her breath rattled in her chest, thin and shallow. I pressed my lips to her forehead. Burning up, I stared at the door, half crazed enough to think I might still try it, make a run for town. But it was suicide. The wind alone could knock a man off his feet. I'd never make it, and if I tried to carry her, she'd be gone before I got a mile out. I dropped to my knees by the hearth, holding her close, rocking her tiny body against mine, the firelight flickering over Sarah's still form across the room. "I can't do this," I choked out, no one to hear me. God hadn't been on my lips since I was a boy, since Ma died coughing up blood, and Pa put his faith in whiskey instead of prayer. But now, with my daughter's life slipping through my fingers, I found myself staring at the knot in the wood floor beneath me, muttering the only thing left. "Please. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. I don't care who hears me. I need her to live." A log cracked in the fire. Emma didn't stir. The storm pressed harder against the cabin walls, the wind moaning like some wild thing hunting its prey. I laid down with Emma on my chest, the both of us trembling, and listened to the slow sound of her breathing, waiting for it to stop. And just as I started to drift into that strange, hopeless numbness of grief, I thought I heard a sound. Not inside, not in the fire, outside. A knock. No, that wasn't possible. Not in this storm. Not way out here, but it came again. 3 slow, steady knocks, as if someone or something had heard me. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. My mind had been playing cruel tricks on me, all weak phantom cries, footsteps that weren't there, Sarah whispering my name in the wind. But then the knock came again. Firmer this time. 3 slow thuds against the cabin door. Steady, deliberate. Emma stirred slightly against my chest. I sat up, the old floorboards creaking beneath me, and tightened my arms around her. No one should be out there. Not in this. The snow was falling so thick, I couldn't see past the window pane. The wind was brutal enough to skin a man alive. My hand reached for the shotgun near the hearth, more out of instinct than logic. Who in their right mind would come all the way out here on foot during the worst blizzard we'd had since '82? I crept to the door, cradling Emma with one arm, the shotgun crooked in the other. My heart beat like a war drum against my ribs. I hesitated. Then I heard a voice. "Please." I heard the baby crying. A woman. That stopped me cold. There was no way. I hadn't cried out loud, and Emma hadn't made a real sound in hours. Her last whimper had barely risen above the fire's hiss. Another knock. "Let me help." "She doesn't have much time." I undid the latch slowly. The wind slammed the door inward, nearly ripping it from the hinges, and there she was. A woman, standing alone in the white fury of the storm, snow swirling around her like ghosts. Her hair was soaked, her shawl pressed tight around her shoulders, but her face calm, composed, eyes dark as earth and steady as stone. No horse, no wagon, no tracks behind her that I could see. Just a worn satchel slung across her chest and boots dusted with ice. She looked past me into the cabin, her gaze landing directly on Emma. "May I come in?" she asked gently. I hesitated. Everything in me screamed caution. The storm, her sudden appearance, her voice that sounded more like memory than sound, but I stepped aside. "She hasn't eaten in 2 days," I said. "I've tried everything. She won't swallow." The woman stepped inside, moving with quiet purpose. The door shut behind her with a groan, muffling the scream of the wind. She walked over to the hearth and knelt down by the fire, motioning for me to bring Emma closer. I sat beside her, Emma limp in my arms. "I'm Maria Santos," she said simply. "Your daughter's fever is high. She's dehydrated and starving." "I know," I said. My voice cracked. "I don't know what to do anymore." Maria opened her satchel and pulled out a cloth bundle. Inside were small jars and wrapped herbs, a chunk of dark bread, and a knife with a bone handle worn smooth from years of use. She handed me a mug. "Fill this with warm water." Not boiling, I obeyed without question, like a man under a spell. My hands trembled, but I did as she said. She took the bread and, to my confusion, began to chew it slowly, mixing it with her own saliva until it turned to paste. Then she dipped her finger in and gently pressed the mixture against the inside of Emma's mouth. "Bread mash. My grandmother used this when we had nothing else. It's the first thing she might take." I stared, speechless. Emma flinched, but then her lips moved. Swallowed. My breath caught. Maria repeated the process, slowly, carefully, whispering soft words in Spanish I didn't understand, but felt like lullabies all the same. Emma swallowed again. A sound came from her throat. Not a cry, but a sound. Maria looked up at me. "She's not out of danger, but she wants to live. She just needed someone to remind her how." I covered my face with one hand. Everything inside me cracked open. The fear, the guilt, the bone-deep helplessness. I wept right there beside the fire. Maria reached out and gently touched my shoulder. Her hand was warm. "She's strong," she said. "And so are you. But no one can do this alone." I looked at her then. Really looked at her. Who was this woman who came walking through a blizzard, guided by a cry I couldn't hear? I didn't ask. I just nodded. And stoked the fire higher. By morning, the storm had buried the world in white silence. Snow pressed thick against the windows, muffling everything like cotton in the ears. But inside the cabin, it was warmer than it had been in days, not just from the fire, but from the breath of hope that flickered like a second flame in the room. Maria sat beside the hearth, sleeves rolled to her elbows, her dark hair drying in loose waves around her face. Emma lay nestled in her arms now, wrapped in Sarah's old shawl, small chest rising and falling with precious steadiness. I watched her like a man watches a lit fuse, not wanting to look away in case it burns out again. "She swallowed more this morning," Maria said softly. "A little mash, then the thinnest broth. She's fighting." "I thought she was gone," I whispered, my voice graveled. Maria looked up. "She almost was. I should have felt shame. A father who couldn't feed his child. A man who begged a God he stopped believing in the minute his wife died. But all I felt was raw gratitude, so sharp it made my hands shake." What you did," I stammered. "The bread, the way you knew how to—" "Old methods," she said with a shrug, not unkind. "Taught by my grandmother, used when doctors were far away and time was short." She glanced at Sarah's still form in the bed, and something flickered in her eyes. Not judgment. Something softer. "Was she in pain?" she asked. "No," I said. "Or not for long." "She bled too fast. There wasn't time to scream." Maria nodded, like she already knew. "Women know. Sometimes even before it begins." Her words landed heavy. I sank into the chair near the fire, too tired to move. I hadn't eaten in a day and a half. My limbs felt wooden. She noticed. Without a word, Maria opened her satchel again. From it, she pulled a heel of bread, hard on the edges, but still good. She warmed it by the fire, broke it in half, and handed me a piece. It was the first food I'd eaten in over 24 hours. "You always carry this much bread?" I asked, chewing slowly. She smiled. I bake often. It travels better than soup. Do you live near here? I asked. No, I travel, looking for something. Sometimes, she said, gently rocking Emma. Sometimes something calls, and I follow. That answer stirred something in me, something I didn't want to name. I tried to shift the focus. You said you heard her cry in the storm. Maria nodded, but she hadn't made a sound in hours. I could barely hear her, and I was holding her. She looked at me then, deep and level. A cry isn't always with the mouth. Sometimes it's with the heart. You screamed, Jake, whether you meant to or not. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to challenge it. Another part just wanted to believe it. I fed the fire again, and silence settled over us for a while, the kind that doesn't demand to be filled. Emma stirred. Maria smiled. She's going to be stubborn like her mother. I blinked. You don't know Sarah. She didn't answer. Just kissed the top of Emma's head. I should have asked more questions. Where Maria had come from. Why she was really out here. Why she'd walk through a blizzard to reach a stranger. But IDN single quotes T. something told me not to ask yet. Instead, I sat beside her on the floor. Emma in her arms, warmth on our skin, a dead storm behind us, and something else between us now unspoken, uncertain, but real. I leaned my head back against the wall and exhaled. For the first time in days, I let myself rest. The blizzard broke sometime after noon. I hadn't seen the sky in 4 days, but now it stretched out above the cabin, pale blue and wide as forgiveness. The world beyond the porch was a sea of snowdrifts, smooth and quiet as a burial sheet. Inside, Emma slept, her cheeks flushed with warmth instead of fever. Maria brewed something sharp-smelling in a battered tin kettle, her movements slow and practiced. The quiet felt different now. Not dead like it had since Sarah passed. Just resting. I stepped outside to shovel the path. My arms ached from exhaustion and days without real sleep, but I welcomed the pain. It gave me something to grip onto. I didn't expect to hear the jingle of reins or the crunch of hooves behind me. Jake? A voice called. I turned. George and Martha Haywood were riding up with 2 burlap sacks slung over their mule. Behind them came little Calvin Owens on his snowshoes, carrying what looked like a full basket of eggs and a smoked ham. What in the hell? I said. We heard you might need a hand, George said, sliding off his horse with the grace of a man who'd worked land longer than I'd been alive. But how? I didn't send word. I haven't been into town. Beth Coleman saw smoke from your chimney, Martha interrupted, already moving toward the cabin. No one's seen you in over a week. She got nervous. We all did. I stood dumb, heart thudding. I had spent so much of the past year closing folks out. After Sarah's pregnancy got complicated, I kept to myself more and more, always telling myself I could handle it. Didn't want pity. Didn't want whispers. Didn't want to owe anyone anything. Now, here they were. 3 neighbors. Sacks full of food. Questions in their eyes. Concern on their faces, and I'd done nothing to deserve any of it. Maria opened the door before I could stop them. Her eyes swept the newcomers like she already knew their names. Baby's inside, she said gently. Still weak, but better. Martha brushed past me, shaking snow off her boots. Thank the Lord, she muttered. When we heard your wife passed, I told George no way. Jake Morrison makes it through winter alone, with a newborn. I wanted to argue, to prove I could have done it, but then I saw the way Calvin crouched near the hearth, quietly handing Maria a wrapped bundle of ginger root. The way George set up a small pot of stew without asking. The way Martha gently adjusted the quilt on Sarah's body, whispering a quiet prayer under her breath. The guilt hit like a hammer. I should have told someone, I said. I thought I could. You thought wrong, George said simply. That's all. Maria touched my arm. Let them help, she said. You've been alone long enough. Emma woke and made a noise, just a squeak, but loud enough that Martha turned, startled. Well, I'll be damned, she whispered. That child's got lungs after all. Everyone chuckled softly. Even George cracked half a smile. The sound felt like a warm wind in spring. Strange and familiar all at once. We spent the afternoon working. Martha helped Maria prepare herbal poultices for Emma's chest. George mended the cracked window pane. Calvin dug a fresh path to the well. By evening, There was stew in the pot, light in the windows, and life in the air again. I stood on the porch alone as the sun sank over the snow. Maria stepped beside me, handing me a cup of coffee. She remembered this, she said, looking toward the cabin. Not in detail, but in her bones, that when things were darkest, people came. I swallowed hard. I never asked for help. You didn't have to, she said. And maybe that was the point. Emma was stronger every day now, her cries louder, her grip tighter. She reached for things, stared at faces, and had this little half-smile that snuck out when Maria hummed her lullabies. Life had cracked back open like a spring thaw, slow but certain. I still woke in cold sweats sometimes, reaching out for Sarah, expecting her hand beside mine in bed. But the ache wasn't as sharp. It had settled into something duller. Not easier, just quieter. Maria had stayed. We never talked about it. One day passed into the next, and there she was, feeding Emma, mending linens, humming in Spanish while the snow melted from the roof. She never acted like a guest. She never asked permission. She just belonged. One afternoon I was chopping wood when I heard wheels crunching over thawed gravel. I turned and saw Reverend Williams's wagon, dusted with road mud, pulling up the hill. Riding beside him was Beth Coleman, her boy Tommy squirming beside her on the bench. Beth had always been kind. A widow herself, she ran a modest boarding house in town. We'd exchanged pleasantries before, but never more than that. She looked different, now tired, but soft around the eyes, like someone who knew what grief tasted like and didn't flinch at the flavor. Afternoon. Jake, Reverend Williams said, stepping down. Didn't expect company, I said, wiping my hands on my shirt. Beth smiled gently. We heard little Emma made it through. Thought it might be time. Time for what? She nodded toward the cabin. Sarah's burial. I froze. I hadn't even told them she was still inside. Beth continued, quiet and respectful. I know it's hard, but spring's coming. The ground's soft enough now. Folks would like to pay their respects. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. My throat locked up. Maria appeared on the porch. Emma nestled on her hip, watching silently. We can help prepare, Beth offered. The church ladies are already putting together food. Reverend Williams rested a hand on my shoulder. You've done right by your wife and daughter, Jake. No shame in letting people walk the next part with you. I didn't answer, just nodded. 2 days later, we held the service in the field behind the cabin, where Sarah used to plant sunflowers. People came, dozens more than I expected. They brought food and chairs and stories I'd never heard. Martha spoke about Sarah's quilting. Calvin remembered the time she pulled him from a frozen pond when no one else was around. I stood beside the casket, holding Emma tight, wind tugging at my coat. Maria stood a little apart, quiet, her eyes on the ground. Beth stepped beside me, her son Tommy tugging at her skirt. You all right? She asked softly. I didn't lie. No, she nodded. Me neither. Not for a long time. Something passed between us in that moment. Not romance, not yet. Romance, not yet. Just understanding. The kind that forms between people who've walked through the fire and come out burnt, but breathing. After the service, people lingered. Maria served coffee. Beth helped fold blankets. I caught myself watching the way she cradled Emma, the way Tommy leaned into her side like she was the strongest tree in the forest. That night, after everyone left, I found myself staring at the hearth, Emma asleep against my chest. You think I waited too long? I asked Maria. She was sewing by lantern light, glasses perched low on her nose. To bury her? I nodded. Double quotes, no, she said without looking up. You did what you could. Grief doesn't follow the clock. I exhaled. She'd want Emma to be loved, Maria added. By many. I looked down at my daughter. She is, I said. And for the first time I believed it. Emma's laugh was the kind of sound that made the world stop. A gurgling, belly-deep squeal that bubbled out when she kicked her legs or grabbed Maria's long braid. That morning she sat in a basket lined with quilts, gnawing on a wooden spoon while Maria and I folded clean laundry under the sun. Beth came by most days now, sometimes just for coffee, sometimes with Tommy and fresh bread. She'd taken to brushing Emma's hair without being asked, humming little songs that used to make her own boy sleep. I didn't know what we were becoming, but I knew it felt good. Right, even. Still, there were things I hadn't asked. About Maria, that night after Beth left and Emma was down, I finally said it. Why did you stay? Maria looked up from her sewing, eyes unreadable. Because she needed me. I nodded. I get that. But other babies need help. Other storms. You could have gone. She didn't answer right away. Just set down her needle and thread and walked to the hearth, where the last of the fire still glowed orange. My daughter's name was Sophia, she said. The words hit like a drum in a silent room. She died during childbirth, Maria continued, voice steady. 7 years ago. No doctor. No help. Just me screaming into the dirt. I buried her and her child under an oak tree. I can't bring myself to visit anymore. I stood frozen. I hadn't expected that. Didn't know what to say. I wondered after that, she said, wrapping her shawl tighter. At first because I couldn't be in my own home, then because helping others made the pain quieter. She looked over at Emma, sleeping peacefully in her little basket near the fire. When I heard your cry, she said, I thought, maybe this is why I survived. To save just one. I sat down slowly. My hands felt heavy. You didn't just save her, I said. You saved me, too. Maria turned toward me, eyes full of something I couldn't quite name, grief and grace, and maybe something deeper than both. I'm not her mother, she said softly. No, I agreed. But your family. She blinked fast, nodded once, then picked up her sewing again. Not to change the subject, but to steady herself. The days stretched longer with spring creeping in. I watched Emma grow with every sunrise, stronger, louder, fiercer. One morning, I came out to find her walking between Maria and Beth, holding their fingers like reins. She wasn't even a year old yet, but she had both women wrapped around her chubby little fist. She's got your stubbornness, Beth teased, brushing Emma's hair behind her ear. Or Maria's, I said. Maria just smiled, eyes crinkling. The strange thing was, I didn't feel torn anymore. Between past and present, between grief and gratitude, I felt whole. And for the first time since Sarah died, I began to picture a future. Not just survival, not just duty, a life, one built not on what I'd lost, but on what had come through the storm. The porch was alive with twilight sounds, frogs calling from the creek, wind stirring the pines, Emma babbling at the dog while Maria lit the lantern. The air smelled like earth and wood smoke. Spring had laid its gentle hand over the land, and things that once felt impossible now felt. Near. Beth and Tommy arrived just before sundown with a basket and a nervous smile. Hope you're hungry, she said, stepping down from the wagon. Tommy held out a jar of blackberry preserves like it was treasure. Mama made biscuits. Emma reached out her arms, giggling when Beth scooped her up like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stood there like a man seeing something he wasn't sure he deserved. Stay for supper, Beth said, brushing hair from her face. Just the four of us. Nothing fancy. It wasn't the words that caught me. It was the way she said it, soft but full of hope. Like maybe she wasn't just offering a meal. Maybe she was offering more. I opened my mouth, but Maria answered for me. He'd love to, Beth smiled. And for a second I wanted to kiss Maria on the forehead for knowing what I couldn't say out loud. Dinner was simple beans, biscuits, the last of the ham. We laughed more than I expected. Tommy showed off his best whistle. Emma drooled on Beth's sleeve. I couldn't stop watching the way they all fit together, but the weight in my chest returned after they left. After Maria tucked Emma in, I found myself drifting to the back of the property, to the small wooden cross, where Sarah now lay beneath the sunflowers. The moon was out, cold and high. I knelt in the grass. I don't know what you'd think of all this, I whispered. Emma's growing fast. She has your scowl and your feet. God help us both. I swallowed hard. I met someone. Not like that. Not yet, but Beth makes Emma laugh. And she listens when I talk about you. She doesn't flinch. I paused. And Maria, she saved us. She's not just passing through. She's part of us now. I hope that's all right. The breeze stirred the grass like a sigh. I love you, Sarah. Always will. But I don't think you meant for me to stay frozen with you. Emma needs more. And I think I do too. I stood, heart aching and light all at once. Back inside, Maria was by the fire, mending Emma's little dress. She looked up. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah." She studied me for a moment, then smiled. "There's more life in your eyes tonight." Maybe there was that night. I wrote a note and tucked it into Emma's baby book, one Sarah had started and I hadn't touched since. It said, "Today, we were invited to dinner. You laughed, sweetheart." And I said yes. That's how it begins. 1 year later, the cabin looked almost unrecognizable. The roof had been patched. A second room added with the help of George and Calvin. New curtains fluttered in the windows. A rocking chair sat on the porch where Sarah used to stand and watch the sun go down. And under that same sky, friends from every corner of the valley had gathered. Emma, now walking with the proud wobble of a toddler, was the star of it all. She toddled from lap to lap in her white cotton dress, curls bouncing, her laughter rising like bird song above the chatter. Beth stood barefoot in the grass, her dress simple but elegant, her hand in mine. Tommy clutched a wooden ring box like it held a secret. Maria watched from the porch, dressed in deep blue, her face radiant and quiet. She held a ribbon Emma had dropped and tied it gently back into her hair without a word. The Reverend stood before us all. We didn't marry in a church. We didn't need walls. The land was holy enough. "I've never seen a ceremony like this," Reverend Williams said, smiling as he looked out at the gathered faces. "But I reckon God's in all of its storms, blizzards, and new beginnings." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Before he could finish, I held up a hand. "There's something I need to do first." I turned, walking away from the circle, past the garden, through the tall grass that brushed against my boots. There, under a blooming sunflower, was the simple cross marking Sarah's resting place. I knelt, just like I had months before. "Hi," I whispered. "It's today." I took a breath. "I wanted to thank you. For our daughter. For everything. I wish you could see her now. She's fearless. She's going to make us all crazy." I smiled. I never planned on this. I didn't think I'd ever stand beside another woman or open this home to something new. But Beth, she's not a replacement. She's her own kind of gentle, her own kind of brave. And I think you'd like her. I reached into my coat and pulled out a small slip of paper. I tucked it under a rock beside the cross. It said, "I promise Emma will always know you." Then I stood, turned back toward the cabin where Emma clapped her hands between Maria and Tommy, where Beth waited in the grass, barefoot and smiling. When I reached her, I didn't need vows or rings or speeches. I just looked into her eyes and said, "We're already a family. This just makes it official." Reverend Williams said the words. Folks cheered. Maria wiped her eyes. Tommy handed over the rings with a grin that nearly split his face. We kissed, and Emma squealed. Like the world was perfect, the sun sank low behind us, casting golden light over the fields, over the grave, over the porch that now held 3 rocking chairs, and a memory that would never fade. Life had not replaced what was lost, but it had grown, something new in its place. Not perfect, not painless, but full.